We have Senator Rand Paul on with us. Got to talk to him about a couple of things. A, staying out of war in Syria. Two, and Anthony Fauci, is he going to be pardoned? But let's start with d.o.g.e. The Senate Republicans, hopefully, are ready to just slash government spending. And hopefully we do it in the fashion that Calvin Coolidge did it back in the 1920s. Senator Rand Paul, welcome to the program.
Hey, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So how serious do you think this d.o.g.e. thing is?
I think it's very helpful because, the problem is not just Democrats in Washington. It's big government Republicans.
Correct.
And I think Elon and Vivek bringing attention to this, we've already offered up. I've been for 10 years collecting and arguing that we should get rid of waste. We sent them 2,000 pages worth of waste that could be addressed immediately. Some can be done through executive action. I think you can let people go. You can fire people. You can fire people for cause. You can also change the contracting. One of the things Elon did at SpaceX was he started bidding on things, and they started doing it through competitive bidding as opposed to cost plus. The big companies, Boeing and Lockheed, would get their contracts and say, oh, we bid $1 billion. Oh, sorry, we came in at $2 billion. Well, you get 10% of whatever you come in at. So, in fact, there's an incentive to come in over budget.
Right.
So there's a lot of things they can do, and I hope they will do. On spending reductions, there's a special procedure where if we send $1 billion to the administration to build a ship, and they build it for $800 million, they can send the $200 million back to us through a special procedure called rescission, and it gets an immediate vote, a privileged vote, and it's a simple majority. Most of the problems we have is getting to 60 votes to undo bad things the Democrats have done. But with this case, rescission, reducing spending that is sent back to us by the president, it's a simple majority. However, we tried to do this in the first Trump administration with a really small bill, $15 billion cut, and it failed because Republicans voted with the Democrats to keep the spending. So we have to do this. We're going to have 53 in the Senate and only 1 or 2 majority in the House. We've got to see if we can actually get the majority of Republicans to vote for spending cuts. If they all do, we can cut significant spending.
Would you agree with me that Donald Trump's different than he was in 2020? That if we would have had him in 2020, it would have been a different situation entirely?
I think he's much more focused now. His picks for his cabinet, I think, are light years ahead of what was going on in 2016 for sure.
Yeah.
And he really wants to disrupt. He is not going to allow the status quo. He saw the status quo use the apparatus of government to come after him individually. And he realizes that in 2016, but again through 2020, that our intelligence agencies were being used against him. Both retired and I believe active went after the whole Hunter Biden thing to say it was Russian propaganda. And it turned out the propaganda was actually U.S. propaganda, calling it Russian propaganda. And the FBI needs to be cleaned house. Kash Patel, I think, can do it. D.o.g.e, Tulsi Gabbard, I think, can do it over there.
Good.
And he hasn't picked, moderate, weak-kneed Republicans. He's picked strong people. On the COVID front, picking Marty McCary, a doctor from Johns Hopkins, and Jay Bhattacharya, a doctor from Stanford, who've been leaders in pointing out this nonsense. These are people I would have picked. So I'm over the moon. I'm over the moon with some of these picks.
So what do you think is going to happen? I mean, it's the White House is saying that Fauci may be pardoned in advance of anything, which doesn't seem like you could do that, but they'll try it anyway. I mean, at least it has to be, everything just has to be dumped and exposed.
I've sent referrals, criminal referrals on Anthony Fauci twice to the Department of Justice without really response. Merrick Garland hasn't done his job. He's probably been the most partisan attorney general we've ever had. I will send those referrals again. If they preemptively pardon Anthony Fauci, it will seal his fate as the architect, author, and godfather of the pandemic. He's the one that funded it. He's the one that funded the research in Wuhan. He's the one that allowed the research not to be scrutinized. People don't quite get this. There was a safety committee that was supposed to scrutinize dangerous research. It was set up because of fear of exactly this happening. There have been scientists talking about this for 20 years, worried that this is going to happen. Anthony Fauci sidestepped the safety committee and allowed this research to go on. Then when it came forward that he had done it, he's like, oh, nothing to see here. We didn't really do it. Oh, well, we funded EcoHealth and they funded Wuhan, but oh, nothing to see here.
Right.
And then he had the gall to say it wasn't gain of function and it wasn't dangerous. That's all a lie. All that's come out. And really, we have him in his own words. We have him in private saying, oh, we know it's really dangerous there, and we know they do gain of function research. So we've got him dead to rights. If the president pardons him, I think it'll just cement his role in history as being the architect of gain of function surgery.
So, but will we release this? This is the one thing I'm hoping Kash Patel does. I hope he releases just the raw evidence that has been gathered. You know, kind of like the Twitter files, where we can see all the stuff that has been classified that should be seen by the American people.
With regard to COVID, we voted unanimously to declassify all of it. So this was over a year and a half ago. The FBI did do their job. They did a report, and they said that they thought COVID came from the lab, that the virus or the pandemic started with a lab leak, but they haven't released their report. They've been told to declassify it. I truly believe Kash Patel will look at that. And the way you declassify it is this. If there's a name in there, you don't want somebody to know a name or a source, you take that out of the report. In fact, even when I read and see classified things, I almost never have seen a name or a source, which I think is good. You protect your sources, but I should get to see all the information. And really, in this case, the American public should see all of the information. Anything to do with Russiagate, anything to do with the abuse of the FBI to go after Donald Trump, all that has to be publicly released as well.
Well, on Friday, here in Fort Worth, Texas, there was a judge that ordered Pfizer to release and produce all of its emergency use authorization file to a group of scientists that want to look through it. And they've been saying, well, we can't do it. And the judge finally just said, do it now.
Yeah, we've never had someone like Donald Trump or like these appointees. And that's why first line of battle is getting them through. There are many establishment Republicans, you know who they are, who are weak-kneed or frankly just no better than Democrats that are looking to destroy Donald Trump's picks. And so I'm going to be working very hard for Robert Kennedy, for Tulsi Gabbard, for Kash Patel. These are, those three right at the tip of my mind are have a lot of establishment Republicans questioning, and we got to make sure we get them through, and we got to make sure everybody, listening to the radio, everybody out there is calling their particularly Republican senators and saying Donald Trump needs his team.
How long do you think? I mean, do you think he's going to get these? What do you call them? Out of session appointments, because it took him like 2 years to get all of his appointments. He didn't even get all of them in 2 years. He needs them right now. But I hate the precedent that would set.
The vast majority will be very quickly. I can tell you, I am hopeful that I will be chairman of the Department of Homeland Security. So Kristi Noem's nomination will come to my committee. My plan is, if elected in the next couple of weeks in January to be the chairman, I will have a hearing for her before the inauguration. As soon as he officially appoints her after the inauguration, I may be able to have a vote that day. Sometimes we will vote that day. So while some of it was slow in 2016, the Secretary of State, Homeland Security, several of these important positions were filled pretty quickly. And we plan on doing that again. I would be surprised in the first week if we don't have 4 or 5 cabinet level people appointed and voted on in the first week.
Let me switch topics to Syria. The president made it very clear that this is not our issue. I went back this weekend and looked at a story from 2016 where the CIA was supporting one side and the Pentagon was supporting the other side in Syria, and they were fighting each other. And now the president, the current president, whoever that is, bombed Syria over the weekend. And I just have this bad feeling that the military industrial complex wants to have a war somewhere. And Donald Trump is coming out and saying it isn't any of our business. I know where you stand on war. What do you see coming?
I agree completely with Donald Trump on this. And the people who took over, the rebels who won, Their new name is a new name given to an old group called Al-Nusra, which were associated with Al-Qaeda. So they were Islamist, meaning that they were for a radical, fundamental sort of nature of Islam that doesn't treat women well, doesn't treat Christians well, et cetera. A very primitive form of Islam. Well, they've been fighting there for a long time. There's also another group called ISIS that is actually somewhat the same, fundamental Islamist. And then there are also other groups there as well. There have been the Russians there. There have been Iranian proxies there. There have been Assad there. Caught in the mix are hundreds of thousands of Christians who have always had sanctuary since the time of Christ, frankly, and are at risk. And so we have 900 soldiers. 900 soldiers isn't enough to organize a parade. I mean, 900 soldiers is not who you go to war with. You want to go to war in Syria, you put 5, 10, 100,000 troops in. You don't put 900 troops in there. They become targets, not a deterrent.
Right.
They're not deterring anything. But if some of them are killed, and I hope this doesn't happen, then all of a sudden maybe we are dragged into the middle of a civil war where there are no good people on either side of it.
Let me ask you one final question about you've got a bill coming out that's similar to the South Korean law, which I don't even know what happened in South Korea. I'm still confused by that, where the U.S. Senate would allow presidential emergencies to continue only with a majority vote in Congress, which I 100% back. What does this mean to all of the emergencies that we have dating way, way back that are still in effect?
They'd expire. And currently, if a president has an emergency, the emergency can only be stopped by Congress if Congress votes to stop it, but then the president would veto it. So it really takes a 2/3 vote of Congress to stop an emergency. My bill would actually change it where it's a simple majority. We don't have to vote to stop it. It stops automatically by statute. We had this in Kentucky in our state government. Our governor shut down the hotels, made it illegal to travel, made it illegal to go to church during COVID, and the legislature couldn't stop him because they weren't in session. So when they finally came back in session, our Kentucky legislature said governor's emergencies last 30 days, then they expire unless affirmed by a majority of the legislature. So this reverses it. Instead of needing 2/3 to stop a crazy governor or a crazy president, it actually takes you have to have a simple majority to affirm it. So it really completely flips this on its head, and it's what we have all wanted. And some partisans will say, oh, this is against Donald Trump. No. I had this under Harris. I had this under Biden. I've had this bill for years. And both Mike Lee and I have fought on this out of principle, nothing to do with who the president is.
I don't want any president to have this kind of power. We have got to reduce the power of the president of the United States. And if he goes in and does everything by executive order, we lose. Because the next guy will come in and do exactly what Biden did and just cancel it all. We've got to get back to a debate, to reason, and to Congress and the Senate actually doing their job.
This is something that people need to realize that it's not new because people get caught up in the situation. They think it's about one person or another. The constitutional position of conservatives and limited government advocates has always been that, as Madison said, we divided the powers, we separated the powers, and we wanted to pit ambition against ambition. In other words, the ambition of people to try to take power would be pitted by the others trying to keep them from taking power. But over the last 100 years, since FDR, the power of the presidency has gradually expanded, and what we need now is a stronger legislature and less power for the central authority to balance that power again. This was sort of Montesquieu saying that when the executive legislates, when he has both the power to execute and legislate, that's when liberty fails. That's when tyranny arrives. And so I don't know. People just need to realize this has nothing to do with an individual, a new president, an old president. It has all to do with constitutional principles that have always motivated those of us who believe in limited government.
I think there's a lot of people awake to exactly that message, and your time is right now, Rand. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Senator Rand Paul from the great state of Kentucky.